All right, I want to start with the inventory worksheet that you can find on Blackboard. We are going to start with the periodic system in this particular video, and we're going to run through LIFO, FIFO, weighted average using that periodic system. The things that we're going to start with here that you'll see on your worksheet, you will see January 1st is our beginning inventory. We have 100 is our quantity, unit cost is 10. Then we have January 5th, we make purchases, $500 at $11 unit cost. January the 10th is another purchase of 200 at $12. January 15th is 100 units at $13 a piece. January 22nd is 300 at $14, and January 30th is our last purchase of the month for 100 at $15. Now, under the periodic system, we don't keep track of when we sell items and them coming in and out of inventory. We look at it at the end of the period and look at what we've sold at the very end of that period, and then determine, what our cost of goods sold is, what our ending inventory is. One of the first things that you need to look at with this particular one is we need to know how many units we actually have. So what you're going to do is you're going to add what you had in beginning inventory to all of the purchases so far for the year, and we find out that we actually have 1,300 in inventory. And so that's going to be something that we do need to know. The first one that we're going to look at is that FIFO, which remember is the first in, first out. So we're selling those first units first. Now in this case, our worksheet lets us know that XYZ Company has sold 1,000 units during the month of January. So under the FIFO system, what we're looking at is we have sold 1,000 units. Now with this, we have to start at the top and work down. So with this, I've kind of got them color-coded as to which units we're looking at to kind of help us maybe a little bit better. We're going to start with those with the red dot first. So we will have, and I'm actually going to color code them here just so that you can see what I'm looking at. So we'll have 100 units at that $10 mark that will be sold. And that is going to leave us with 900 units that we need to sell. The next units are going to come from these green, and so that's going to be 500 units at $11 that we're going to sell. And the next units that we have, because we have 400 more we need to sell, are going to be the 200 units. And those 200 are going to be at $12. And that's going to leave us with 200 more that we need to sell. And the next that we're going to have, so I'm going to kind of come up here to kind of look at it real quick. We'll have 200 that we need to sell, and so we're going to sell those 100 purples. So that's going to be 100 at 13, and that's going to leave us with 100 that we need to sell, and those are going to come from these units right here. Those ones that are in the black. So of that, we're going to sell 100 at 14. And then that pretty much has us where we have everything that we need out there. So what we find here is that we had 100 at 10, 500 at 11, and I'm going to actually move over to another sheet so you can see how this is going to work. 200 at 12, we had 100 at 13, then we had 100 at 14, and those symbolize the ones that we actually did sell. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move over to the next page and kind of jot down what we have here. So that 110 is going to equal $1,000. Then we have the 500 at 11, and that's going to equal that 5,500. Then we have the, 200 at 12, and that's 2,400. I have 100 at 13. And then I'm going to have, oops, I did that one backwards, sorry. Wrong color. Right numbers, wrong color. So 100 at 13 was the 1,300. Now I go 100 at 14, and that's going to be the $1,400. So what I would do in looking at my cost of goods sold is I would take and add up all of those numbers, and what I find is I have 11,600. And so that is what I actually am going to have when I look at my cost of goods sold. Now remember, this is using that periodic system, so it is just based on, those things that are sold. Now, I will tell you that under the periodic and perpetual system for FIFO, they will be the same. Now, LIFO will be different, but FIFO would be the same. Now, if I want to look at ending inventory, if we go back, remember we had 1,300 total units. If we sold 1,000 units, that means that we have 300 units in ending inventory. So back over here, what you'll notice is we still have 200 units here, and we have 100 units at 15. So when I come back over, what I'm looking at here is I do have 200 units at $14, and I'm going to have 100 units at $15. And so when I look at these particular numbers, what I'm going to end up with, I'm going to end up with the 200 at 14 is at $2,800, and the 100 at 15 is going to be $1,500. And so that is a total of, when I add those up, of $4,300. Now, when we add these two amounts together, that is going to give us what our total purchases were, which was at $15,900. And so remember, now this is just for that FIFO system that we've been looking at. The next thing we're going to look at is our LIFO system. All right, now the next one we're going to look at is that LIFO system. So I'm going to take away what we've got here that we just got through looking at. Alright, so when we look at LIFO, remember we're no longer going from the top down. We're now going from the bottom up with what we sell. So if we were selling those 1,000 units, what we would have to do is we would have to start and then move from the bottom and move up. So the first units that we would be looking at would be these ones that have the pink beside them with the 100 at 15. Then what we would do, we have 900 more to sell, and so we're going to go to those in black, which would be 300 at 14, and that leaves us 600 to sell. Then we would go to the purple units, because those are the units that are next up, because we've sold these guys, so now we're on purple. So we have 100 at 13, and that gives us 500 left. So now we have 200 at the 12, and those are those blue units. So we're going to do 200 at 12, and that is going to leave us with 300 units. And so those last units that we have are going to be in that green section, and those are the ones that cost $11. So we're going to do the last 300 units we have will be at $11. So those are, kind of what we are looking at on this particular spectrum. So that is how we would come up with, and of course now we're at that 0 mark here. That is how we're going to come up with the cost of goods sold. Now for the ending inventory, it's what we have left. And so for ending inventory, we have 100 at 10. And we're going to have, we've sold, here we've done 300 of these guys. And so what that means is that we have 200 left over. So I would have the 200 at 11 is what I would have for that ending inventory. So I have the 1,000 here, and I'm going to have those 300 units over here, which is going to equal that 1,300 total there. So that is really what we're looking at for that LIFO, and then for that ending inventory. So if we go over and look at these, it's going to be a little bit different than the way our FIFO did as far as our totals are concerned. So we would have that 100 at 15 for a total of $1,500. We would have the 300 at 14, and that is a total of $4,200. And then we would have the 100 at 13, which would be $1,300. The next one that we have is going to be, let's see, the 200 at 12, which is $2,400. And then the last ones that we have under LIFO, cost of goods sold, would be the 300 at 11, which would be a total of $3,300. So when I total this up, what I end up with for my cost of goods sold under this LIFO periodic system is going to be $12,700. And then we had, for that ending inventory that we were looking at, remember we still had 200 at 11, and then we have the 100 at 10. And so what that gives me, here I have that $1,000. Here I had $2,200. So I am going to have a total of $3,200. Now when we add those two together, cost of goods sold and ending inventory, we have $15,900. Now if we go back and look at FIFO, when we added them together, notice we had $15,900. Our cost of goods sold here was, for FIFO, was $11,600. You notice that our cost of goods sold for LIFO is $12,700. That is because with LIFO, you're generally going to have a higher expense because you're looking at those units that have come in later, and they usually cost more. Your ending inventory under LIFO is going to be smaller than under FIFO because you're looking at those first units in your ending inventory there. Now the other thing that we have to do with this periodic system is weighted average. Weighted average is not difficult. You don't have to look at a lot of these things that we've been looking at. You don't have to worry about the colors or anything else. All you have to worry about with weighted average is coming up with what the totals are for everything. So here I would be looking at, well, what's the total for this first purchase? And it is at $1,000. What about the second one? 500 times 11 is 5,500. For the second one, we're looking at 2,400. Third is 1,300. Then we're looking at 4,200. And then we're looking at 1,500. And that gives us a total of 15,900. We would then, when we look at weighted average, we would look at taking these totals. So we want the total cost and we want the total number of units. So those are those two numbers that we're going to be moving forward and looking at weighted average. So under the weighted average, you're going to take the total cost, which we found to be 15,900. You are going to divide that by the total units. Now, that total units are going to be the beginning inventory plus any purchases. So those are the total units available that we have out there. And in this case, that is 1,300. And when we do this, this is going to give us an average cost of $12.23. So again, remember that this is a average cost, is at $12.23. To finish looking at this weighted average, what you have to know is for cost of goods sold, how many units were sold. So in this case, the units sold were 1,000. That is given to us. So you would take those 1,000 units, multiply that by the average cost, which was at the $12.23. When you multiply that out, we end up with a cost of $12,230. So $12,230 would be what our cost of goods sold was. Now for ending inventory, we have to look at what was our units. Well, they were 1,300. How much did we sell? We sold 1,000. So that means we have 300 units. So we would take those 300 units that we have in ending inventory, we would multiply that by the average cost, which was $12.23, and that means that our price for ending inventory is going to be $3,669. If we take and add those two together, we get $15,899. Now, the reason that it's $1 off is because of rounding. Because when we got the 12.23, that wasn't an even number. That was like 12.23, and then it had other numbers. And if we had left it like it was with all those other numbers, then we would have not had that rounding. But what I want you to understand is, you see here we have the $15,899. You know, for our LIFO, you notice the $15,900 total. For our FIFO, the $15,900 total. That is coming from the fact that this is what we need our total to be. You notice we have that $15,900 right here when we looked at our total cost. So our total cost should be, for the goods that we purchased, it's going to be what we've sold, cost of goods sold, plus whatever that ending inventory is. Let's look at these three items here. So we have the FIFO system, and with FIFO we had a cost of goods sold of $11,600. With LIFO we had a cost of goods sold of $12,700, and with weighted average we had a cost of $12,230. In ending inventory for FIFO, we had $4,300. LIFO, we had $3,200. And for weighted average, we had $3,669. So what you find here are the comparisons. And for FIFO, we have a lower cost of goods sold. So you'll notice that for FIFO, our cost of goods sold is lower, but our ending inventory is going to be higher because it's our ending inventory are those last units that cost us more, cost of goods sold are those first units which cost us less. Under that LIFO system, however, we find that our cost of goods sold is higher because we're using those last units that we got in that cost us more money, so the cost of goods sold is higher. Ending inventory, on the other hand, is those first units we purchased, which cost us less money. So for LIFO, ending inventory is generally going to be much lower in cost. And then our weighted average is actually going to be in the middle of those two because it's an average system to where we're not looking at those first units, we're not looking at the last units, we're looking at an overall average. And so it is going to be in between those LIFO and those FIFO systems. For tax purposes, a lot of companies would prefer to use the LIFO system because it has the higher cost of goods sold. Remember, cost of goods sold is one of our expenses, and so that means that we have less income. Less income means less taxes. So that is something that we need to look at. Now, you can't just go in and change it. We have to kind of keep it the same. That goes back to those concepts that we want to be able to compare it. We want to be able to also have a system that, you know, looks at these same things every year. So those are the things that we do need to look at when we are looking at this LIFO, FIFO, weighted average, and all of those types of systems. The next thing that we're going to look at is going to be that perpetual side. Remember, everything we've done so far has been periodic. So this is how you work on the periodic side of the cost management system.